man?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing good, John. I know you're busy as always. It's a very busy time of the year for anybody that covers politics, especially locally right now, right?
It sure is, and it starts earlier and earlier every year, Brian.
Yeah, no question about that. So, John, I thought you did a great job, as always, when you moderate debates. Before I ask you some specific questions about the debate, what were your thoughts on it as a whole?
Well, I was just thrilled to get it in the first place. It took a lot of negotiation behind the scenes to actually get the debate, and I'm glad we got it. And you could feel up there that these two guys do not like each other. They really don't.
I think you're right about that. There's no question. There were a lot of interesting moments in the debate, but I'm going to tell you a moment that I thought was really sad, and I'll go after both candidates for this one. These are these commercials that are put out there, and both candidates seem to be okay with mistruths, right? I mean, certainly on Lombardo's side, where a political ad is out there saying that Sisolak is under investigation. You correctly pointed out that he is not under investigation, and it seemed like Lombardo just kind of shrugged his shoulders, and Sisolak the same thing. What do you make of that moment? Is this where we're at? Isn't that a good example of this is where we're at right now when it comes to politics?
Well, I listen. I guess I'm a little bit of a nerd to this after doing it as long as I have been and seeing plenty of ads where the truth is either completely lost or distorted. I guess the one of the good things about a debate is being able to point out to voters what is true and what isn't true in the ads, and see the reactions of the candidates when they are forced to defend their ads and to call them out when their defense has all kinds of leaks. And so I enjoyed that part of the debate. I tried to choose ads that would show what kind of campaigns each of them are running.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I guess you could call them mistruths on both sides. What did you make of the moment where Sisolak is talking about two officers Metro officers that died of COVID, and Sisolak looks at Lombardo and basically says, and I'm paraphrasing here, he says, "Why weren't you at the memorials? I was there." And then Lombardo responds by saying, "This is political theater," while you have two wives that lost loved ones that are sitting right there a few feet away. My question to you, John, is number one, what did you make of that moment? And number two, why can't Lombardo just look at those two wives that are now widows and say, "I'm so sorry for your loss"? Like, it seemed to me in that moment, he showed a very large lack of compassion, even if he had a legitimate reason for not going to those memorials.
Well, there's a lot there, Brian. First of all, I have to say that it's clear Lombardo was very, very irritated to the point of angry with what Sisolak had done. And listen, I was very, very irritated by it as well, that they had gotten these widows in there and that they had planned to do this political stunt, which is what it was, political theater, call it what you will, whether or not you think the issue is legitimate. On the other hand, I had some appreciation as a political observer for how they handcuffed me. What was I going to do, Brian? Say, I don't want to talk about this. And then I knew Sisolak would come back and say, you're not going to have any deference to these two poor widows who lost their husband. So they did that to create a scene at the debate and fluster Lombardo, and it worked. Should Lombardo have probably just said, listen, any loss is terrible, whether it was on the job or not, and I'm sorry for their loss, and I left it at that? Sure. But he was flustered and angry, and to some extent, I don't blame him.
To an extent, John, isn't that what Sisolak did, a play from the Donald Trump playbook? If you remember the debate against Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton's accusers, sexual assault accusers, Donald Trump brings them into that presidential debate. I think using people like that for political points is wrong. And I'm going to agree with you, and I think that's what you're saying, that even if Lombardo should have been at those memorials, I felt like, bringing the wives into it was wrong, and I just think it's dirty politics. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's all kinds of dirty politics. This is not even close to the dirtiest thing that I've seen, or probably that you've seen. But it was an underhanded stunt. And they essentially, some background information here. They had to give us lists, both campaigns, of who they wanted to have seats in there, and I didn't pay that close attention to it, to be honest with you. But if we had seen that those were those two widows, I'm not sure if I would have stopped it, but I might have.
I think you're the best person to ask this question. Who do you think won the debate? Who do you think scored more points, or do you think it was a draw?
Yeah, I mean, I never like saying winners and losers unless it's just so obvious. It's clear that, and when you say win and lose, Brian, it's like, what does that mean? Who was better prepared? Who was smoother? No question, Sisolak was. But the real issue is, what did the media coverage look like, and what kind of impact on the electorate does a debate like that have? It's more dependent on what happens afterwards. Can they use anything in ads, etc.? Listen, I thought Lombardo should have been much better prepared for the questions about Trump and abortion. It was as if he wasn't expecting to have to defend those positions. He mishandled the Trump thing so badly. And then abortion, where he's been all over the map, because listen, he's been a sheriff. He hasn't had to think about these kinds of issues, but still, abortion has become a centerpiece of every campaign in America, and his inability to really articulate where he stands was problematic for him. Does it matter in the long run? I have no idea.
Yeah, you asked him about Donald Trump's lies, election lies, and you said, don't you think that's a big deal? And on the bar, yeah, I do think it's a big deal. But then he continues to talk about other things and refuses to criticize Donald Trump or those on the extreme far right. I guess that's par for the course for a lot of these candidates that want an endorsement from Donald Trump that have received one. John, did you have a chance to catch the Sam Peters, Steve Horsford debate? Sam Peters refuses to do this show. I've had Horsford on a number of times. What did you make of that debate?
Well, I only I know it was on TV last night, and it was simulcast on the radio. And I was out last night having dinner with a friend, and on the way home, I listened to probably about half of it. Peters did, it seemed, better than I thought he would do, considering that he's an election denier and spouts off some of the same nonsense that a lot of these folks do. He seemed to be doing okay on the debate. It does irritate me. And again, maybe this is a pet peeve, Brian. Maybe it just shows the lack of knowledge of these candidates. He's at least the second Republican to say repeatedly that abortion rights in Nevada are enshrined in the state constitution. They are not. They never have been. There was a referendum in 1990 that cemented the statute into law. To not know those kinds of basic facts, and Sigal Chadha, who was running for AG, also did not know that basic fact. When you're trying to make a point about abortion in this state, it may seem like splitting hairs, but I don't think it is.
I think there's a reason why they say that, and maybe they don't know, but maybe they do, and they're lying as well. I mean, I hate to accuse someone of being a liar, but they say that because they want the people in the middle to get votes for them, and they make a statement like that, trying to make it sound like, well, it doesn't matter what my political views are when it comes to abortion because nothing's changing in this state. When we know that that's absolutely not true, and we know that if Republicans were running every state in this country, abortion would be illegal, right?
Probably, maybe. But the issue is that the Republicans are just using this as a shield to say that it's settled law here in Nevada. You're seeing it in the Senate race, in the governor's race, in the congressional races that we just talked about, even in some legislative races. But it's not settled, of course, and that there could be a federal ban on abortion that would supersede this. Is federal, even Lindsey Graham's bill would change the law in Nevada as well. And in Nevada, you could do things to encroach upon a woman's right to choose. And that came up in the debate, as you may remember, waiting periods, mandatory ultrasounds. You could also do what Adam Laxalt has said he would do at one time, which is get a referendum to counter the referendum that's already been passed. So to say it's completely settled is false. On the other hand, it seems to me that some of these Democrats and some of these races are looking a gift horse in the mouth. They have an issue they can use against the Republicans, and they go too far with it, saying that so-and-so wants to lock up people in prison, women in prison, and these kinds of things, and exaggerating what their actual positions are. And so I understand it's tough to break through with some of these ads, Brian, but I don't think that's an excuse for just totally, and you can say exaggerating, you can say lying about someone's position.
Agree with you 100%. If you're just joining us, he is from the Nevada Independent, of course, Jon Ralston joining us on the show. John, I don't know if you heard this soundbite. I'm going to play it for our listeners. It happened in Nevada at a Trump rally. Senator Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama making a statement about race, making a statement basically in regards to affirmative action. Have a listen to this. Those are people in Nevada that are praising him and cheering. He's basically saying that those committing the crimes are black people, and he's talking about reparations. He's taken some flack for that. What do you make of the cheering and that statement that the senator made?
Well, that whole rally, which I watched too much of, and I'm never going to get that 3 hours of my life back. I have to admit, and I don't say this proudly at all, I wasn't listening that closely to him when he was talking. I actually missed that when he first said it. But I mean, the clapping seals aspect of that entire rally, Brian, was just sickening. And considering that almost every speaker up there lied or said something that was totally out of bounds, and you don't see that too often in these kinds of rallies. So I guess what I'd say about that is I don't think this is over for Tuberville, and I think a lot of Republicans are going to be asked if they agree with those comments. Now they'll dodge it in the same way that Republicans dodge when they're asked about Donald Trump saying X, Y, or Z. But I don't think the story's over yet.
No, I don't think it is either. Just disgraceful comments, and even more disgraceful the people there that were clapping and cheering. It's despicable. So, John, as you know, we had a tragedy, a horrible tragedy on the Strip where, two people lost their lives to the stabbing and several women stabbed, and they're still recovering from their injuries. Right? We all could agree, just a terrible incident. A lot of even local Republicans and nationally, people are talking about the perpetrator who murdered these people and stabbed these people as being an undocumented person in this country, and they're turning it into a political story. What do you make of that? Do you think politics should be injected into this? And what do you make of people on the far right that every single time somebody who is illegal commits a crime, they want to turn it into politics in the border?
It's utterly repulsive and disgusting, Brian. And, you could see it coming. I mean, in the world we live in now, suddenly it's Catherine Cortez Masto and Steve Sisolak's fault that this person committed these crimes on the Strip. And no incident can occur without it being exploited for political gain. It's just absolutely revolting. And I would say the same thing if the left was doing it too. But this is just, as you said, people died. And so they just want to make an issue out of the person being in the country, it appears illegally. And so then they can do more of their open borders. This is so-and-so's fault. It's repulsive. It really is.
It really is. And the majority of those on the right that are either wanting to be reelected or running for office seem to put forth that same narrative. I hear a lot of people in Las Vegas talking about this red wave that's coming. You hear it throughout the country. We have momentum. You'll hear it from politicians everywhere on the right. Do you believe that there is a red wave coming to Nevada? Do you think that's nonsense? Or do you believe these guys like the Laxalts and the Jim Marchands and the Sigal Chattas actually have a real good, legitimate chance of winning?
Well, all of those that you mentioned could win, yes. Whether there's going to be a broad and deep red wave, I know this isn't what you want to hear, Brian, but I've told a lot of people this, I don't know yet. I'll know more when people start voting a week from Saturday in early voting, and I can analyze those numbers. All the atmospherics look bad for Democrats, but they've been able to overcome that in the past with a better turnout operation than the Republicans. All the signs pointed to a red wave in 2010. Somehow Harry Reid survived. All the signs pointed to a red wave in 2014, and the Democrats got wiped out. So is this going to be a 2010 scenario or a 2014 scenario, or maybe even something different where the Democrats find a way to survive? The real wild card this time, it makes it harder for someone who's been predicting elections for decades, Brian, is that this explosion of nonpartisan registration and who these people are. They're the plurality in the state now. A lot of them, maybe as many as 2/3 or more, were automatically registered at the DMV because they didn't choose a party. Who are these people? There's no such thing as a true independent. They lean one way or another. Which campaigns, which party can find their people in that group and get them to the polls?
I want to ask you some questions on the national front. I want to start with Joe Biden real quickly here. As you know, Joe Biden was on a hot mic and he said nobody F's with the Biden. And, the Sean Hannitys of the world and those on the far right, the Tucker Carlsons, were attacking him for making that statement. And I'm thinking to myself, John, correct me if you disagree with me or not here, all the things that Donald Trump said, knowing that he was on a mic, they had no problem with that. Joe Biden says, don't F with the Bidens, and Fox News is covering it like, he threatened somebody. What did you make of the coverage and those on the right that were going after Biden for making that statement using the F word?
Yeah, I know. I mean, considering what Trump has said on, as you said, when he actually knows he's on camera or being taped, and even in the infamous Access Hollywood tape, what he said there, which is obviously the real Donald Trump. Okay, so listen, it's an intemperate comment, it's a dumb comment, but so what? Why make a big deal? Now they're making a big deal out of the voicemail,
Yes.
very heartfelt voicemail that he left for his son, as if that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, but that, Brian, that is where we are now. And these, it's interesting. You don't necessarily blame the people who are responding to this as much as you do the so-called leaders in politics and the media who are exploiting this nonsense to inflame people who don't really know any better. And I don't mean that as a criticism. Most people are not like me and you and don't do this stuff 24/7 and pay attention. They've got real lives, Brian, and so they don't know any better. And so they're exploited by these so-called leaders on purpose.
Yeah, and I'm going to play that voicemail that Joe Biden, which you spoke about, leaving it for his son Hunter. I'm going to play that tomorrow and dissect that a little bit more. But here's a loving father saying how much he loves his son and he cares about him and he wants him to get help. And people are turning that into a negative thing. Sean Hannity did a segment on that last night. I bet Hannity wishes he had a father like that.
Sean Hannity is a joke. He's a joke. He's not a journalist. At first he said he was. Now he says he's not. Let me be clear. He's not.
No, he's a right-wing buffoon is what he is, a biased fool. That's what I would call him. Listen, I don't like Rachel Maddow either. I don't watch a lot of MSNBC. I watch a little bit of it. What do you make of CNN, by the way, since we're on that topic of Don Lemon moving to mornings and Jake Tapper now in that role? I actually think it's a good move. It appears, though, that CNN, they're trying to get people further, more to the middle than to the left. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I listen. They're clearly doing what you just said, but I have to be honest with you. I don't watch much cable TV anymore. I actually have a contract with MSNBC. I occasionally go on with MSNBC, but I just don't watch it. I have a ton of respect for Jake Tapper. I think he's a very, very good journalist, and I'm glad that he's getting that kind of prominence. I don't feel quite the same way about Don Lemon, but I understand what CNN is trying to do. Whether they can execute it or not, I don't know.
Yeah, that's also a good question. I don't know if they'll be able to. I don't know. I don't know what to make of media coverage anymore. And you not watching cable news is probably a good thing. It drives me crazy. I try to hear from both sides, and I try to form my opinions and hear both sides, but it's really difficult. I had Mark Robertson in studio, John, a few weeks ago. And he was attacking Dr. Fauci and saying he didn't trust Dr. Fauci. And I look him in the eye and I say, you support Donald Trump. Do you trust him? And he wouldn't answer the question. And he made it like I was attacking him. And I feel like with a lot of these people that are running for office on the right, and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but when you challenge them, to me, there's a difference between challenging somebody and attacking somebody. I'm challenging him. He's saying he doesn't respect somebody or even trust somebody with over 40 years of infectious disease experience. But yet when it comes to Donald Trump, he won't answer that question. I mean, what do you make of some of these candidates? Robertson said he would have had basically no mitigating factors during the entire COVID situation. No lockdowns, no shutdowns, and he would have had no problem with 60 or 70,000 people watching a Raiders game without practicing social distancing or wearing masks when we were losing 5,000 people a day and our ICU beds were filled to capacity. To me, that's just reckless. But when I challenge him on that, he sees it as me attacking him, and he thinks he's just going to come in here and go on a right-wing filibuster and not be challenged. That's just not what I do, and I know that's not what you do.
Yeah, listen, that is a classic technique, right? Because it's unsupportable. They have these touchstones, right? Dr. Fauci is the devil. Dr. Fauci lied. Dr. Fauci should never have done X, Y, or Z. And so that's just red meat for the base now. And that's the only reason he's saying that. He wouldn't be able to answer any questions about what Dr. Fauci did that was so wrong. And meanwhile, there's tons of evidence of Donald Trump never even taking the time to understand the virus, not caring about it, except how it reflected on him. And so of course that is the technique. of saying you're attacking them as opposed to doing your job, which is when someone says something that's not quite right, to challenge them. That's the right word. Challenge them. And I already know your style, Brian. I'm sure that you just challenged him, and he couldn't take it because he was just using talking points and rhetoric. That's what a lot of candidates do. Why do you think someone like Adam Laxalt would not come on your show? Because he can't get past his radical left woke talking points.
Yeah, you're right. I'm going to use a couple names here, and I spoke to Mark Robertson before the show, and I said, "What other shows have you done in this town?" And I'm going to name their names because I don't care. Alan Stock, he went on the Alan Stock show, and he went on the Kevin Wall show. I don't think those two guys are bad guys, but those are two guys that will let somebody spout off right-wing talking points, won't challenge them on anything. Those are also shows that rarely ever have a Democrat on their shows. They don't challenge anybody on anything. I mean, Robertson could say, yeah, Donald Trump won the election in a landslide, or he could say Fauci's this, and this. And those type of talk show hosts will not challenge him at all. And I don't think a guy like Mark Robertson understands that not every show is a right-wing conservative talk show, and not every talk show host is going to let him get away with that stuff. And a lot of these, Sam Peters, Adam Laxalt, to name a few, Sigal Chattah, who won't do my show, they just want to spew their right-wing talking points without being challenged. I want Democrats to be challenged too. I always thought that Hillary Clinton should have gone on Fox News. And, I want to see far-right politicians go on MSNBC. But in this, not just in this city, but throughout the country, 99% of these talk show hosts, political talk show hosts, are all conservatives, and they don't challenge anybody. As you know, Ted Cruz was just in town. He did several interviews in Las Vegas. Nobody challenged him on anything. He said the most asinine things about these candidates that he came out here to support, and nobody seems to want to challenge them on anything.
Well, I mean, again, yeah, I won't say anything bad personally about Alan Stock or Kevin Wall, but those are right-wing echo chambers, and they do nobody any good except for those guys to keep their hardcore audience, and for the candidates to just spew their nonsense and know they're not going to be challenged. I agree with you. I wrote a long time ago during Obama's presidency that he should have gone on Fox regularly. I mean, if you don't think that you can defend your positions through any kind of interview, even if the person is being, let's use the word you used, attacking you or being hostile, then what are you in the business for? Why are you there if you can't defend your positions against any kind of assault? So I totally agree with you, but this is much more of a phenomenon of the right than the left, at least at this point in our country.
No question. Well, John, I'll tell you one person who is not an echo chamber. That would be you. That's why I have the utmost respect for you. Before I let you go, and I appreciate your time, how do people follow you and follow, of course, the Nevada Independent, where you guys do such a great job?
Now, you can follow me at Ralston Reports, but this should even more. So go on to NevadaIndependent.com. Check out our elections page if you're still undecided. We have a lot of great information there, and it's always fun to be on with you, Brian. But can I say a couple of things about you before I go? First of all, people should know that Brian is wearing a Pabst Blue Ribbon t-shirt. Now, I drank a lot of Pabst Blue Ribbon when I was younger. It is some of the worst beer you will ever taste, but you didn't know it when you were younger. Secondly, behind Brian is a picture of my hometown team, the Sabres. Go Sabres, man, they're bad. And they've been bad for a while. They were great when I was a kid.
Dominic Hasek, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I had to let people know that you got the Pabst Blue Ribbon and Sabres going on there.
Unfortunately, in Vegas, you get a lot of free T-shirts, John. When you're in radio, I enjoy my free food, my credentials, and my free T-shirts. And to be honest with you, I have no idea where I got this shirt, but I can guarantee you one thing: I didn't buy it. Okay.
Don't drink the beer. I'm warning you.
All right. Well, I'll get you a blue ribbon. I'll get you a beer. Well, we'll have to choose something else next time. A beer on me. But John, always a pleasure having you on the show, my man. Always appreciate you. Hopefully we can have you on again before election night. And I really do appreciate your time. I know how busy you are these days. Thank you so much.
It's always fun. Keep doing what you're doing, Brian.
Thanks, John. That means a lot. That's Jon Ralston, does a fantastic job for the Nevada Independent. Seriously, man, I have like probably 50 shirts at my disposal, probably all free T-shirts. I have no idea where I had them. Some of the shirts I can't wear in public, but I don't know. This was just a clean T-shirt. I'm a single bachelor guy, and I don't dress like Thomas Moskal. I'm not spiffy like him. I don't have a